I'm ready.
Hello and welcome to Real Health Conversations, formerly Low Carb Conversations. I'm your host, Leah Williamson. I'm with my host, Holly Jean. Welcome, Holly.
Hello, hi, Leah.
And we're with our long time, once a former guest podcast host, Marty Kendall. Welcome, Marty.
How you going, guys? Great to be back.
Good to have you on. We thought, isn't it fitting that we're doing our first episode as Real Health Conversations to have you back on and talk to us. So
great to chat. Exciting new time in nutrition and moving on.
That's right. It's been a while since we've had you on anyway. So let's tell listeners a little bit about you, what you do, and maybe what's some stuff that's coming up since we've last spoke to you.
Yeah, what do I do? Engineer by day, formerly. But yeah, sort of fell into the nutrition world. Wife is a type 1 diabetic, so started exploring what all that meant and how I could help her dial in her nutrition to manage her blood sugar and insulin. And that just sent me down a big rabbit hole of trying to quantify nutrition and trying to understand what nutrition is and what are the priorities and what are the biggest levers and that help people achieve what they actually want to achieve and move on from dogmatic belief-based nutrition. I grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist family at the time, and it's the center of nutrition dogma and belief around nutrition, and a lot of our nutrition systems are very heavily rooted in, I believe this and therefore I'm going to eat like this, and I'm trying to pull that out and say, okay, what is it quantitatively about the food we eat that we need that helps us and can help us achieve our goals, depending on whether we're diabetic or trying to lose weight or trying to gain weight, or trying to grow or trying to be an athlete or whatever it is, and what are the different factors that help that.
Yeah, it's great. It's been such a quite a evolution for you. I was trying to think of the right word, because basically you started doing this late at night or early in the morning, like 3 a.m. in the morning. You'd get up and do your readings and your blog posts and then go and work a full day as an engineer. Yep. So what are you doing these days?
I'm just a part-time casual engineer now, and a lot of the time I help people. We run masterclasses in data-driven fasting and macros masterclass and micros masterclass. So I spend a lot of my time just helping those people, guiding them through the process of dialing in their macronutrients and micronutrients, and using blood sugar as a fuel gauge in data-driven fasting to sort of break the fasting for longer is better, and then I end up rebound binging sort of scenario that a lot of people find themselves in. So and just building the website and building the tools and building recipes and just refining everything. I've got a big picture vision for nutrition to keep it moving forward beyond that belief-based nutrition. So I'm just trying to rewrite everything and come up with new ideas to communicate that more clearly.
Yeah, and I love that your website and blog, Optimizing Nutrition, is really like my go-to for anything. If I see something come up and I'm like, I bet Marty has an article, science-based, evidence-based,
data-driven,
straight talking, data-driven article on how I can respond to that.
Here's a link.
Here's a link. And I think many people feel that way about it as well. So you just have a really good knack of just making it real, obviously.
Dumbing it down to my level that I understand as an engineer, not a medico or a nutritionist.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit more about, so you've got Optimizing Nutrition, that's the main kind of blog website where people can go and find you. And then what are the little offshoots about that? So you mentioned data-driven fasting.
Yeah. So we've got a data-driven fasting app. We spent 5 years trying to build Optimizing Nutrition and help people understand nutrient density. And we said, let's use blood sugar as a fuel gauge to dial in when you eat. And everybody said, I want that. It's so simple. And it's this really effective, simple way of using your pre-meal blood sugar to guide when you eat, and also what you eat. As soon as you start testing your blood sugar, you find what foods work for you, what foods don't, and more importantly, what foods leave your blood sugar elevated the longest, and all those sort of things work together. It's basically more of a focus on nutrient density, protein, even fiber, and less carbs and fat. And as we might talk about, a whole food system has become this refined slop of refined grains, refined sugars, and refined vegetable oils, fueled by inputs of non-renewable fossil energy fertilizer that we all eat these days. And if we can quantify that, what's important about nutrition, it's nutrients, really. It's not whether we're low carb or low fat or high protein or low protein, plant-based or animal-based or carnivore, or whatever the latest belief-based dogmatic approach to nutrition is, or even keto. Let's bring it down to, what do you need from your food? It's nutrients with enough energy, but not too much energy. And if you bring it back to that, it just cuts through all the confusion and garbage out there.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to say something, Holly?
Yeah, well, when you do your program, are people using like a continual glucose monitor with that?
Yeah,
Or
no, we
doing, like,
typically
fingerprint?
find that a simple glucometer is the easiest and
Okay.
most accurate and most cost effective. A lot of people are really fascinated by CGMs, and it's the new biohacker
Yeah.
tool that everybody wants to try. In America, a lot of people can get them on health insurance that are really cool. And my wife and my son, who's recently become a type 1 diabetic in December, just for funsies, it seems I was destined to be part of it. But they both wear one, and I'm actually wearing one now for the last 6 weeks just to play with it. But at the same time, it's not as accurate as a glucose monitor. And data-driven fasting, people need accuracy to time their meals. And it also traps a lot of people, I find, into thinking that more flatline blood sugars are better. So they end up switching out all their carbs and even their protein, and then they eat fat to satiety, which is not really a thing. So they end up degrading their nutrient density and satiety, and end up overeating and swinging to a keto extreme. So yeah, I try to say, hey, just use a glucometer, and it's a whole lot simpler and cheaper. And then rather than looking at your CGM to say, can I refuel now? It's like, am I hungry? Am I hungry enough to test my blood sugar? If yes, then you go ahead. It's not just your blood sugar's low, therefore you have to eat now, sort of thing. So it's just using your blood sugar to validate your hunger. And pretty quickly people learn to train their hunger. And there's a really nice correlation between pre-meal blood sugars and your actual hunger and your need for food.
Very interesting. That sounds cool. That could probably be a separate episode.
Oh, I'll talk about anything for as long as you let me.
We have talked about it a little while back. I'll link it up into the show notes. We talked about the results from it, I think.
Yeah, it's completely blown up and
yeah.
massive community, and we've had thousands of people through it. And over the last month, I've been analyzing the 500,000 pre-meal glucose data points to understand what are the biggest factors that help people actually lose weight. And in the keto community, it's all about avoiding carbs and even protein to get those flatline blood sugars, because we're all afraid of any rises in glucose and insulin. But it's really the pre-meal glucose that's the most important, and focusing on the rise in glucose is much less important to your metabolic health.
So interesting, isn't it? So
I love it.
Any spoilers you're going to share with us?
Oh yeah. Pre-meal is the bomb. Your glucose before you eat, using your glucose as a fuel gauge is where it's at. And we need to stop worrying so much about managing those little fluctuations in glucose. I mean, if your blood sugar is outrageously, if you're taking insulin because you're diabetic and your blood sugar comes crashing down because it's risen too much, and you get really hungry at that point and eat anything and everything, and you're raiding the pantry for the peanut butter and cookies and ice cream, then at that point you've probably let your blood sugar go too high. But most people, their blood sugar is in a great range, especially if they're from a lower carb background. And it's the pre-meal blood sugar and dialing in what you eat to allow you to eat again more sooner, rather than I'm eating keto and I've had 3 bulletproof coffees and I don't feel hungry, but that's because you've had 3,000 calories of oil with no nutrients and no protein. That's why you don't feel hungry. And then they go, I'm not losing weight. What's wrong with it? So yeah, I'm just trying to unpack and solve all those problems that we all see on social media and Facebook with all those groups of people
We love it.
chasing the wrong metrics.
Yeah, love it. When's the next round of your data-driven fasting happening?
Yeah, we've got a micros masterclass starting Saturday, so tomorrow, and then we've got the data-driven fasting on the 23rd of July. So we run about 8 of those a year, and lots of people just keep coming back to do it for 30 days, have a break, practice maintenance, and do it again, and just keep on working towards their optimal. So,
and you have such a great community. They're so engaged. Everybody is just like right into it. They're all in engineering geeks like you.
Oh, not really just nutrition people who like nutrition. And we actually moved off Facebook into our own little Mighty Networks optimizing nutrition community. And it's really, really healthy and really, really good to get away from the noise of, the conflict and craziness that drives social media. So it's just a really fun, beautiful community of people who are all passionate about the same thing. So
good.
Oh, that's awesome. I've heard really good things about that Mighty Network, so I'll have to explore it more.
Yeah, it's a really good place to have a community that you can guide and nourish and grow. So that's what we're trying to do. And every time I get on Twitter, I regret it deeply. So it's just great to have this alternate place where we can reach thousands of people.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about nutrients.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great idea.
That's why we thought we'd get you on. And Holly and I have been looking, well, it's been a while. We've been looking at different forums in the noise of Facebook and we see so many questions being asked. And we had an episode the other week where we're like, should people really be asking these type of questions here? And is the advice that people are receiving advice that they should be taking, and how to look at this, through the lens of, biasism and, and what can I decipher as what's, because people will bombard you with so much advice, which is, and I know a lot of it's coming from a good place. I don't want to discourage people and, say that everything is terrible and you shouldn't ask questions and, how else do we learn things? But how can I sift through all the things that people give me and find out what's going to work best for me?
Yeah.
And the question this week we're looking at was from a forum, and it said, can I eat carrots and beetroot on keto, or are they too high in sugar and carbs? Yep. And I just was reading through some of the responses and I was just like, oh dear, and it got me thinking, it's like, why are we hating on vegetables, and with the rise of things like carnivore, which is quite a big movement, I thought, I don't know, I'm going to ask Marty, what do you think? Should we eat vegetables?
On carnivore, I had a really fun chat with Sean Baker last week. It was a really good, engaging conversation. He was really rational and I don't think I saw a video where he was saying, people say that I tell everybody that you shouldn't eat any vegetables, and that's not what I do. I'm just emphasizing the benefit of meat. I think people like Paul Saladino paint vegetables as evil and they're all out to kill you. But I suppose on keto, what does that mean? That's my first question is what the hell does keto mean? And technically, a ketogenic diet is one that raises your blood ketones to a certain level for a certain purpose. And the origin of keto is, people chasing therapeutic ketosis for, young children with epilepsy to manage their brain seizures, or dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, where those people's brains have become insulin resistant, their glucose can't get in. But it's morphed into this thing where, ketones equals fat loss, and therefore high ketones equals fat loss. And it's like, well, the more we've gone through the keto movement and coming out the end of it, I think now you look at the Google trends and searches for keto is crashing. People have realized that high ketones isn't doesn't necessarily align with better health, better metabolic health or weight loss. And sorry, I bumped my mic. And the people that have the best metabolic health tend to not have elevated ketones because they've got more developed, more effective monocarboxylate transporters that clear lactate and ketones in your body. So you're more effectively using glucose, fatty acids, and ketones, so they don't build up to these really high levels. So I've had people chasing elevated ketones for the last 5 years, and I'll just add more fat and exogenous ketones and avoid all plant-based foods in the pursuit of high ketones. But really, the healthiest people on a ketogenic diet tend to have 0.2 to 0.6 average 0.4 ketone levels. So $2 a strip. Why are we chasing ketones? Why are we measuring? Why do we care about ketones is my question. And I wrote a book called Big Fat Keto Lies, sort of pursuing that. Is fat to satiety a thing? No, it's not. The more fat you eat, the less satiating it is. Carbs aren't necessarily better. Carbs provide the same satiety. So that's the first fundamental question. That was a bit of a rant, but why are you keto? What do you expect from keto? What do you want from keto? If you want health and weight loss, you want greater satiety from the food you eat. Beetroot and carrots, probably not going to kill you. The big thing in our food system is those combo foods that I mentioned before, of the refined sugar, refined grains, and refined oils, industrial oils, all combined together that make this processed slop that we put fortified synthetic vitamins in and colors and flavorings. So we just eat more of them, and we've got very poor nutrient density and therefore very poor satiety. But these foods in nature are rare, and we love to eat the fat carb combo that we just can't stop eating. So that's what you want to avoid. Beetroot and carrots aren't going to kill you, but if you're looking for nutrient density in vegetables, it's the non-starchy green stuff like the spinach and asparagus and watercress and everything that sort of grows above ground that tends to be green, that contains the potassium and sodium and magnesium and vitamin C and those things that we don't get as much of from meat and seafood.
Which is true. And so, but obviously vegetables, I just like to think about we have vegetables here, and they're part of our food system for a reason. They weren't, they're grown from the soil. Yep. They've been around for many, many years, maybe just, even before we had agriculture, they were totally just growing I've got a pumpkin just growing in my yard. These things happen. So obviously they have a place in our diet and life, dietary ways. So, so as I was going through and looking at all of the articles around what does the news say about eating vegetables and on a keto diet? And the only thing they could ever talk about was carbohydrates. They're low and high in carbohydrates. And if you want to have lower carbohydrates, then avoid eating vegetables. Yep. No one ever says anything about nutrients. Yeah.
What nutrition? What's nutrition about? Nutrients. Why is nobody focusing on the central tenet of nutrition? What does our body need? We're obviously getting too much energy, but what do we need? It's nutrients.
Yeah. Are we missing the point?
Totally. Everybody's missing the point because it's not. Nobody's making money out of healthy veggies and seafood. Nobody makes money out of that crap. It's the labeled products.
So if I was going to eat some veggies, what are some of the most nutrient dense veggies that you say? So leafy greens. What about, I see mushrooms comes up a fair bit. What do you think about mushrooms?
Mushrooms are really, especially if you don't eat meat, mushrooms are a really good source of a lot of nutrients, including protein. And, energy density is a thing to a degree. Barbara Rolls did the volumetrics diet, which I have some issues with, because when you look at what's actually most significant in that relationship, it's protein, it's fiber, it's nutrients. But, those foods tend to be hard to overeat because they contain not a lot of energy with a lot of bulk. So in the short term, they fill you up, but over the long term, you need nutrients to keep you satiated to prevent cravings over the longer term. So yeah, all those above ground veggies are fantastic and are really hard to overeat. And it's not what's killing us. It's the refined sugars, grains, and seed oils that we all mix together to make this hyperpalatable slop that we need to avoid. And I think most people who are ascribing to the keto dogma or low carb dogma, that's what they really want. They don't really need to be keto, jump under the keto umbrella as a religious dogma. They just, want metabolic health, and they need to prioritize more nutrients with less energy from fat or carbs.
I think when I was scrolling just before, I saw, I think it was David Asprey came up and he was talking about this inflammation. Like, he was saying that it takes fried food, like fried fish and fries or whatever, like 2 weeks or something to come out of the body, where a cigarette takes 6 to 8 days.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the information is fascinating, but at the same time, what promotes inflammation? It's being over fat and having more energy than you need. So prioritizing dietarily more nutrients, more amino acids, vitamins, minerals, omega-3 from your diet with less energy. If you've got excess stored energy, is going to reduce your inflammation as well. So, and the industrial seed oils have gone up by 600 calories per person per day over the last 100 years. So that if you want to look at a smoking gun, it's just the increase in vegetable oils in our diet over the last century since we worked out how to make oil that we can put into food from industrial seed crops.
Yeah. Actually, I just want to go back and correct what I was saying about cigarettes. I think it was actually hours, not days I read. So it was even shorter than I imagined. But yeah.
Well, although I don't think you're recommending cigarette smoking.
No, I'm not recommending cigarettes. What's the nutrient density of a cigarette? Although everyone who's into plant-based stuff and the plant medicine, tobacco apparently was originally, used as a helpful tool, not a bad tool.
There you go.
Well, you can use cigarettes for weight loss. If you get hungry, just smoke a cigarette instead of eating.
Nicotine suppresses appetite.
Yeah, there you go. Holly's got some hard-hitting questions for you now, Marty. Watch out.
Go. Hit me, Holly.
Do I? Well, I don't know if it's hard-hitting because you've already kind of touched on these things where it's like everyone wants to get so hyper-focused on, do I eat vegetables? Do I not eat vegetables? Is this vegetable going to put me out of keto? And you already touched on it's really the bigger picture. And so instead of getting so micro focused on, should I eat this or should I not eat that? But it's more, what should I avoid? And it's the things you mentioned with the seed oils and the processed carbohydrates and the excess sugars. And it's like, if you just start with all that and just eat real foods, but then you can maybe hone down. But there is a lot of stuff going around right now about vegetables aren't necessary at all. You don't need them. If you're eating nose to tail for animals, you're getting everything that you need from animal sources, and we don't even need vegetables. So I don't think that there's a yes or no, right or wrong, black or white answer to this. I think, like with everything nutrition, there is a spectrum. But what would you say to the people that are asking about anti-nutrients being in vegetables? Like you mentioned superfoods and the leafy greens, but then you're going to have some go, oh, what about all those anti-nutrients in there? What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about the carnivore diet, it gives you heaps of bioavailable protein, which is where the magic happens, is that once people get enough protein that they can use in their body, satiety kicks in and everything else works out. But meat only has less vitamin K1, vitamin C, omega-3, calcium, magnesium potentially, and a number of those nutrients. So they are contained to some degree in those foods, but there's less of them per calorie. So you have to eat a lot more of them to get that. And the high satiety meat is going to be hard to overeat. But I think, a lot of people going, oxalate's going to kill you and anti-nutrients going to kill you. And it's mainly Paul Saladino and his followers. But Saladino intentionally, eats a lot of organ meat. he'll drink nothing but mineral water, which that's really expensive where I live. I don't know whether it's fairly hard to do that, and that contains a lot of the harder to find micronutrients. And he's still, I don't think that approach is necessarily optimal, and most people aren't eating a lot of kidney and liver and brain. And like, I did an analysis of his diet, and he's eating, massive amount of sheep's brain to get his omega-3. And I don't think most people are going to eat raw sheep's brain. If you're eating a lot of raw sheep's brain and kidney and liver, then you may be doing a lot better. But most people are probably going to find a little bit of spinach and asparagus and mushrooms more palatable. Most of the time they struggle to eat that, let alone raw sheep's brains. So, and some people do have oxalate issues or anti-nutrient issues, but the paper that Paul Saladino quotes from Bruce Ames about anti-nutrients, the point of Ames's paper is to say, everything in nature has some level of toxicity and we can't avoid it. And he said, that paper says everything we eat has toxicity and we should avoid everything but nose to tail grass-fed meat. And I don't think that's Ames's point at all. And I think if you eat spinach and go, okay, I can only tolerate 50 grams a day, then I'm off to the bathroom. Don't eat more than that, and just find the foods that you can add to your plate that are going to give you those harder to find nutrients. But at the same time, you can only eat so many non-starchy veggies before you explode. And at that point, once you've found your limit, you go off and enjoy the nutrient-dense meat and seafood. So it's sort of a balancing act, and people like to think, especially in the forums and Facebook chats, in this dogmatic all or nothing, black or white approach. And it's like, okay, how do I get my magnesium and vitamin C and potassium? Potassium is incredibly important in everybody's diet, and it's one we don't get enough of because our soils are so depleted and we're not eating a lot of green stuff anymore, and we don't supplement with it, we don't fortify with it, so it's really deficient. Where do you get those nutrients from? Your food. And once you've consumed enough of the non-starchy green veg that you can enjoy or tolerate, if you found that limit, then the rest of your calories, the rest of your protein comes from meat and seafood.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you're right. Like it's stuff like that gives nutrition a bad rep for a couple reasons. When you're promoting eating only carnivore and nose to tail and sheep brains and mineral water, that gives us kind of that reputation of that, well, these are elitists or something. Like, it gets that air of like snobbery, where it's not really attainable or makes sense to most people. But then on the other end, it could also be a big turnoff because it does just make it more complicated. It's like, just eat real foods. And it's like, don't worry about the nitty gritty of it. Like, just start with just eating proteins, eat your veggies.
Yep.
And then if you need to tailor it from there, then go ahead. But I do want to ask about fiber. Do we really need fiber? Like, I know it's been talked up in the media, it's in all the nutrition books, but a lot of people say, you don't really need it. So do we or don't we?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. A lot of people do better without fiber, especially if they've got a disrupted gut because they've been eating trash food that's grown a lot of got an overgrowth of bad bacteria in their gut, and backing off the fiber can really help alleviate those symptoms. And I suppose I lived long enough in the online world to see, although the mainstream nutrition tends to say you need fiber, a lot of people thrive without fiber, like you say, in a carnivore diet, and get that alleviation of symptoms. And Paul Mason's done a lot of really interesting work there. But at the same time, foods that contain nutrients also contain fiber. So carbs without fiber and fat are just really energy sources. You can see them as carbon-carbon bonds. The carbs will be more explosive sources of energy. The fat's great for storage and slow burning when you're not running a sprint up a hill for the rest of the time. So they're both great sources of, or in moderation, good sources of energy. But the fibrous vegetables tend to come with nutrients, as does protein. So our analysis said, you don't aim for a greater fiber intake. We don't really we set a bunch of optimal nutrient intakes, but when it comes to fiber, we don't really say you have to get this much fiber. If you don't like fiber, if you don't tolerate fiber, then that's fine. But if you can eat foods that contain carbohydrate, then if you're getting 40% of the carbohydrates of fiber, you'll tend to eat a lot less. So, and that tends to be the lower carb people prioritizing the nutrient dense veggies tend to get a lot more satiety, but over 40%, it doesn't tend to provide greater satiety. So don't go trying to down Metamucil or oat bran just for funsies, because you'll probably not tolerate that well either.
That was going to be my next question, because that's probably one of the most popular supplement things that I see. It's just people doing scoops of fiber every day because they aren't eating the fibers, either by choice because they're doing more low carb, or because there are people who just don't like eating vegetables. So they are doing the scoops of the Metamucil and whatever, the benefit and all that stuff. So
yeah, I don't know. I just don't, supplements in general just don't provide the same benefit as whole food. And in our analysis of satiety, the foods that the people that are obviously getting a lot of this, that, or the other nutrients, especially the vitamins from fortified foods, are eating a lot more potentially because they think they've got this insurance from the supplemental vitamins or the fortification that gives them an excuse to go ahead and eat the trash and slop and ice cream and whatever that they love. So I think it just gives you a false sense of security that you've got nutritional insurance that you can then eat. You don't have to eat your meat, veggies, and seafood that are actually going to provide the satiety and the nutrients in the complementary beneficial forms and ratios that your body understands and can use.
yeah. I mean, I mostly just sum it up to, it's still just a processed food, whether you're throwing it in a blender
Totally.
with your protein powder, and you're still just eating a meal of processed foods with some powder.
Yeah. Find nutrient dense whole foods that taste great, because they're probably grown in an environment that's rich in nutrients and probably good for the world, and the from regenerative agriculture that's good for the planet as well.
Yeah. All right, Leah, do you have anything?
Well, I just wanted to finish up asking Marty what he thinks about people asking health questions in general on the forums. And I mean, because you started out a little bit like that in terms of not you asking questions, but seeing a need because people were asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of my blog posts are promoted, provoked by those questions that keep coming up and again and again. And I thought, I can't keep writing the same thing in responses. So create 4,000 word articles with a bunch of graphs and analysis you can throw at people and go, there you go, read that. I'm not going to answer this one again. It's a great fertile ground for inspiration and continuing to pursue the data to understand what the answers are. I think where things get messy is people ask for medical advice, like you said, which comes to medications. And when it comes to medications, go talk to your doctor. And that's what we always do. If you're on insulin or some semaglutide or this, that, or the other medication, then you definitely should be talking to your doctor face to face about that. But at the same time, a lot of the issues that underlie metabolic syndrome that we're trying to treat with medication are really come back to, what you're eating, how strong you are, and how much excess body fat you're carrying, which is the root cause of metabolic syndrome. So once I'm a fanboy of Ted Naiman, and he just says, if you're strong, if you're don't have energy toxicity, which means your blood sugars are high and your adipose tissues overfull, and you're strong and you're eating nutrient dense, high satiety foods, that actually manages the root cause of all those issues. So I just try to keep directing people back to what's the root cause and how can you manage that. And it's like prioritize nutrient density with less energy and do something active every day.
And I think it's kind of like, I think, you know, it was back to your original like why question, you know, is like, what is your why? What is your why? What are you needing to achieve here? Thinking about that.
What's the root cause? What's the root problem
Yeah.
you're trying to fix? And how do we get to that rather than trying to manage it with
whether you should eat a carrot or not.
and or whether you should take this, that, or the other medication, which is massive business. The health, really the sick care system is a massive business. And you know, has a place. When my son needed insulin, you go off to the hospital and say he's type 1 diabetic. I tested, you know, we got a test and his blood sugar was 25 and definitely time for some insulin. There's something going on here.
Yeah.
And if you break your arm, then the medical system is great. But, you know, for metabolic health, which underlies so many of our issues today, it's back to being, you know, prioritizing the nutrients you need from food without excess energy and being active and strong.
So good. Well, thank you so much, Marty. You're always the voice of reason whenever we talk to you.
I'm just the boring engineer in the middle going,
Not boring at all. We love chatting with you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to finish up with, Holly?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's good. If you want to just share again what your sites are.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about fruit. Yeah. What do you reckon about eating fruit? I think it's the same answers, isn't it?
Yeah. You have to get energy from somewhere, and it's a bit crazy that you sent me a clickbait article that is fruit keto, and it's like, man, they're just creating crappy articles to get clicks, and because people are searching for that trash in Google. But no, watermelon and fruit are not keto. But again, why do you want to be keto? A bit of fruit's not going to kill you, but at the same time, the reality is that those fruits were only available in a season leading up to winter that provided sugar and fructose. And if you're eating that with all the other carbs and fat at the same time, it'll allow you to get fat for winter. And then we've concentrated fructose into high fructose corn syrup. So I don't think watermelon or banana is going to kill you because they're really hard to overeat, but they're not highly nutrient dense. Fruit doesn't rank well. Everybody says, where's the fruit on your food list, Marty? What's wrong with fruit? It's like, well, it just doesn't contain a lot of nutrients per calorie. Yeah, they're just little bags of sugar, and if you need that energy, then fruit's not a bad way to get it. But it's the high fructose corn syrup and the added sugars that you definitely need to avoid. So just look at if you're eating something from a packet with a barcode, then look at the ingredient list. And if it contains something like high fructose corn syrup with industrial seed oils and sugars and fortification and flavors and colors, then maybe you should put that back down.
Run away.
Go to another section of the supermarket.
Run away.
Run away.
I liked in that article, it was like, well, if I'm dehydrated, I'm just going to go and have some watermelon because that's what that article told me, basically. And I was like, they're going, just drink some bloody water. You don't need to eat a watermelon to stop being dehydrated.
But the same, well, I joked to my daughter this morning. She saw the article on my screen and she said, the only way watermelon is going to kill you if there's like 3,000 of them rolling down a hill and squash you. So.
Or if you put too many elastic bands around them. Have you seen those things? People are doing
what happens there?
It explodes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's this thing on TikTok or whatever. I don't know. My kids keep showing me, Mum, look at this watermelon explode. And they put it's one of those ones where they're like, oh, he's going to put the last one on. What's going to happen? And then it just goes like that. And you're like, oh, that's the only good use of a watermelon.
Awesome. Yeah.
That sounds like a fun homeschool experiment.
It does. You should try it, but it's dangerous.
Okay. We'll wear safety goggles.
All right, Marty, tell us what's coming up next again for you, where people can find you so they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, on the topic of nutrient density, I'm just in the process of updating my nutrient dense food lists articles. So there's 69 food lists tailored for different goals and conditions. They can download that. So go check that out on the website, Optimizing Nutrition. We've got a bunch of meals and recipes, and then our data-driven fasting if you want to learn when to eat based on your blood sugar as a fuel gauge. That's just radically effective and a whole lot of fun, and people are really passionate and raving about that. It's not really fasting, it actually teaches you to eat more regularly and teaches you what to eat to so you can get greater satiety and eat more regularly rather than having to fast for days at a time, hoping for magical autophagy to happen like the mice. But that's another rant.
And it teaches you to actually think about what you're eating as well, like rather than just mindlessly eating and hoping that you're going to lose weight. Yeah,
it kills snacking immediately, but it also gets people to think, hey, what is my blood sugar going to be in 3 hours if I eat the donut versus the steak or asparagus and spinach or seafood? How's it going to behave? And very quickly people find that the things that manage their blood sugars and allow them to return to baseline quicker are the most satiating and nutrient dense and everything else, and it all just wonderfully works together. I just can't believe nobody else has seen this stuff before, so just keep having to share it. And then we've got a macros masterclass, so that helps people find the balance between high carb and low carb and high protein and low protein, which every extreme is unsustainable. So we say, hey, where are you at now? And let's tweak that just a little bit to help you get what you actually need and actually want. Then we've got a macros masterclass that says, hey, what are you eating now? And what new foods and meals can you add to your repertoire to improve your nutrient density? And people get really excited and passionate about competing for the highest nutrient density score. And that's sort of the higher level of the process of nutritional optimization that I hope will be the next movement in nutrition. So that's
Marty's got all these people running around just eating raw sheep's brains straight from the sheep.
Actually, sheep's brains don't feature that heavily, but it's interesting to see how people solve the nutritional puzzle from Kenya and UK and from plant-based and vegetarian to carnivore. Everybody's solving it in a different way in their context with their preferences. So that's a whole lot of fun.
Super cool. Well, thanks, Marty. Thanks for coming on and having a real health conversation with us.
The first real health conversation.
It is, yeah. And perfectly.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's the end of today's episode. Our theme music is by Andrew Bowden and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great week.